If I had walked out of that gallery 5 seconds earlier, I'd still be married to a man I didn't love. But I didn't. I turned back. And in that quiet moment, I saw her standing alone, facing a canvas that looked like it had been set on fire. Her smile wasn't big. It was soft, almost private, like the painting had whispered a secret only she could hear. And I swear, something in me cracked open. Michael, my husband, had never made me feel anything close to that. For 7 years, I played my role. I smiled when I had to. I laughed on cue. I sat through dinners where he talked more to his phone than to me. He never hit me, never screamed. He just slowly erased me, one quiet dismissal at a time. At some point, I stopped talking about my day. And he never noticed. The woman in the gallery didn't know I was watching her. But when she finally turned, her eyes caught mine and held. She said, "Do you ever feel like you're living someone else's life?" I nodded. It was the most honest moment I'd had in years. Her name was Rowan. We started small. Coffee. Then walks. Then hours sitting on park benches, saying almost nothing and somehow meaning everything. She didn't ask about Michael and I didn't bring him up. She talked about painting, about color, about silence. And every time she looked at me, I felt like I wasn't invisible anymore. Michael noticed eventually. He asked why I was dressing different, why I was smiling at nothing, why I was coming home late and talking less. Elite. I told him I was tired, stressed, needed space. The truth was, I was beginning to remember who I was before I became someone's wife. The night I left, I packed one suitcase. Michael stood in the hallway, arms crossed, looking at me like I'd forgotten to turn off the lights. "You're really doing this?" he asked. I didn't answer. I couldn't. Not without crying. So I walked out. Rowan didn't ask questions when I arrived at her apartment. She just opened the door, stepped aside, and said, "Take your time." Her place smelled like paint and rosemary. It felt lived in, safe. Like a place built to hold someone's full story. I thought I had found peace. But there was one thing I didn't understand. A door at the end of her hallway. Always closed. Always locked. I never saw her go in. And when I asked, she only said, "Not yet." Something about it made my skin prickle. But I was already in too deep to turn back. There's something about a locked door in someone else's home that makes you feel like a guest no matter how long you stay. Rowan's apartment was warm, colorful, full of music and light, but that door at the end of the hallway always stayed shut. At first, I respected it. Everyone has private things. I wasn't trying to dig, but the longer I stayed, the more that door felt like a question I wasn't allowed to ask. One night, I woke up to the sound of it creaking. It was faint, barely there, but enough to pull me out of sleep. I sat up. The hall was dark, silent. I thought maybe I dreamed it. But then I saw Rowan, standing in front of it barefoot, staring like she was waiting for something to open from the other side.
She didn't notice me.
She just stood there, whispering something too soft to hear. Then she walked away, without opening it. The next morning, I said nothing. But it lived in my head for days.
She was different after that night.
Quieter.
Distracted.
Her smile took longer to form. And sometimes, in the middle of a conversation, her eyes would flick down the hallway for no reason at all. Once, I asked gently, "Rowan, what's behind that door?" She looked up from her mug.
Paused.
"Just storage," she said too quickly. "Old canvases, stuff I don't need." I nodded, but something about her voice didn't match her eyes. One afternoon, Rowan left to pick up some new brushes. I stayed behind to clean. As I was tidying the living room, I noticed the key. It was small, silver, half buried in a bowl of buttons and old receipts on the bookshelf. I stared at it for too long. My fingers moved before I could stop them. The hallway felt colder than the rest of the apartment. Like the air changed somehow. I stood in front of the door with the key in my hand, heartbeat too loud. I told myself I was just being curious, just looking. But deep down, I knew this wasn't a room full of old paint supplies. The key fits perfectly. It clicked once, soft, deliberate. I opened the door an inch, and the smell hit me first. Not rot. Not something awful. But something faintly metallic.
Dusty. Familiar.
Inside was a small room.
Bara hos.
A table. A single wooden chair. And on that table a stack of journals. I stepped in. The door creaked again, behind me. That's when I heard Rowan's voice.
Low. Come.
Right behind me. I told you not yet. I turned. She didn't look angry. Or even surprised. She looked tired. Like this was a scene she had lived through before. You wanted to know who I really am, she said softly. Well, now you will. And then she walked in, closed the door behind her, and locked it from the inside. She locked the door behind us, softly. Not like a threat, like a secret sealing itself shut. Rowan walked past me and sat on the chair by the table of journals, her hands folded in her lap. Her eyes didn't meet mine. I was going to tell you, she said. I just didn't know how. My chest felt tight. Tell me what? She finally looked up. That I'm not someone people stay with once they know everything. She opened one of the journals. Her handwriting curled across every page. Angry, sad, raw. After my sister died, I started writing everything down, she said. Everything I didn't say out loud. The guilt.
The shame.
The nights I heard her voice when the apartment was silent.
You sat beside her.
Close enough to feel her breath.
She was sick, Elise.
I didn't see it. Or I saw it and ignored it. She died here, in this room. Her voice broke. I kept the door closed ever since. She wiped her face. When I met you, you felt like sunlight, like something new. I didn't want you to see this side of me, this room, these pages, this weight. I didn't speak. I just reached across and touched her hand. She flinched at first, but then her fingers curled around mine, desperate and trembling. You're not broken, Rowan, I whispered. You're just carrying too much alone. She turned her face toward mine.
Slowly.
And then she kissed me. Not rushed, not heated, just deep and aching, like she'd been holding it in since the day we met. Her hands came up to my cheeks. Mine slid around her waist. We didn't rush it. We let it unfold, breath by breath, hand by hand. There was nothing hurried, nothing forced. Just two people choosing not to run anymore. Later, we lay curled on the small floor rug in that quiet room, her head on my chest. The journals sat beside us. The door still locked, but something between us had opened. I thought loving you would be dangerous, she murmured. And I thought loving you meant losing myself, I said. We were both wrong. We unlocked the door together the next morning. Not to hide it again, but to air it out. To let light into the corners that had been dark too long. Rowan started painting their days later. I started writing. Not about what we escaped, but about what we built. They say you can't start over with a broken heart. But I think that's wrong. You just need someone who sees the cracks and chooses to stay anyway. And sometimes, love isn't about rescuing someone. It's about staying when the truth finally steps out of the shadows. And kissing them anyway.